Welcome you all to the Police Advisory Commission's September meeting. I think this is our 6th or 7th Zoom meeting. And we had a rocky start with our first one, but I think we seem to have done that in order. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's 6:01. And perhaps we'll do the Zoom-inspired roll call. So I will call the roll and then ask folks to, I think probably the best way to do this is just to raise your hand so that Danny's not back and forth on, on trying to unmute everyone. It may be a bit of a struggle because I can't see everyone right now. So Danny, I'm gonna assume you'll see everyone, all the other commissioners raising their hand. Okay? Right. So good evening, I'm Rhonda Goldfine. We have two excused commissioners this evening, Sean Along and Sarah Young. And for the rest, is Mujib Chaudhry with us?
Do not see Mujib?
I'm trying to, after saying we had our Zoom technique down, I'm not as fast as I'd like to be, switching back and forth to all of the on-camera participants while I'm reading the roll call. I know that others could do that. I'm not quite there. So do you see Mujib?
I do not see Mujib.
No, he's not here.
Okay. Ben Geffen?
Ben is not here either from what I see.
Okay. George Mosey?
George is here.
Hello, George. Bilal Qayyum?
I believe he'll be late.
Yeah, I do not see Bilal either.
Michael Ramming?
I do not see him.
And Michael Wehrman.
Michael Wehrman is here.
Okay, thank you. Hans, how about we move to staff introductions, if you'd be kind enough, although you don't really need an introduction, but if you'd be kind enough to introduce yourself and ask the staff to do the same.
Absolutely. And just as a note, Ben has texted me. He is on the way. He's having trouble finding parking. That joke never lands. But Ben is on the way. So I'll start with staff. Anthony Irachi is here. Anthony is our Deputy Executive Director. Wave hello, Anthony. I see next on my screen anyway is Janine Zajac, one of the policy analysts. Hi, Janine. Next on my screen is Angelica Hendrick, another policy analyst. Hi, Angelica. And of course, Danny Guy, who's running our meeting today and generally runs everything else. Say hi, Danny. And that's everyone who's here now. Not present currently is Anastasia McCarthy, another analyst. We do have a student from Penn that apparently could not make it, but maybe she'll join us late.
Oh, she actually just joined, I think.
Oh, there she is. Hi, Sadie. Sadie is our intern from Penn, pursuing both her master's degree in social work and her law degree in a dual degree program. We're very excited to have her. And Ben Geffen did just join us. So Ben is not a staff member, but Ben is a commissioner, and he is here. And of course, my name is Hans. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the executive director of the PAC.
Thanks, Hans. So next.
Hello.
That was Siri, sorry.
Oh, okay. Every time I think we have our Zoom technique down, we have to stay humble. So the next on our agenda is a chair's report. And I just wanted to give a little shout out to Reverend Mark Tyler from Power Live Free. Reverend Tyler and Power have been longtime associates of the PAC. And so, they deserve kind of a general call out for their good work. But I'm specifically referencing the ongoing series that Reverend Tyler has been hosting every other Wednesday. It's called Imagining Simply Oversight. This Wednesday will be part 5 from 7 to 8:30. Reverend Tyler is the senior pastor at Mother Bethel AME Church. I had the good fortune to join 2 weeks ago on a Wednesday night when Reverend Tyler was delicately but firmly soliciting commitments from our city council members on where they stand on civilian police oversight, and soliciting some comments and commitments, because the goal is to make sure that civilian police oversight is set up to succeed. Hans will talk a little bit later in the meeting about the ballot initiative, but I just wanted to get that on everyone's radar. And Danny, I'm gonna try to look at the chat. But
I just put in the chat the Power Town Hall for everybody if they wanted to watch that video.
Perfect. So I encourage you all to stop by, and I will see you there Wednesday at 7. Okay. Next up, Hans, your report.
Great. Thank you, Rhonda. I appreciate it, and thank you everyone for coming out today. I think we have a great meeting before us. So as usual, I'll give a quick update about what we've been up to as a staff and what we're working on. And then I'll hand it over to our partners at the police department, who are going to present to us on the mobility project that we've been honored to partner with them on over the last few weeks. So as everyone knows, the PAC continues to work from home. I think that Rhonda highlighted how we've improved a lot of our virtual communication. I'll note that we are now, for instance, streaming on Facebook, which is a new platform for us, and so we continue to improve. And I do continue to applaud the PAC staff for really not missing a beat and continuing to serve all the folks that engage us and move forward by continuing to put out really great work product. And so that's still going very well, although we are eager to find some clarity about when we'll be back in the office. So speaking of that great work, Angelica, as you all know, led the PAC on some of the GBI initiatives, and that ended with, or culminated with, a report on GBI. Since then, we have participated in the GBI Advisory Committee, which is largely a group of elected officials and myself who talk about, alongside the Office of Violence Prevention, how the initiative is going and how we can support it. So that's been a good group of folks that offer a unique perspective on GBI. In addition to that work, about a year ago, we put out a report on self-help evictions. That work is still very much alive. We talk about that pretty often, and including recently, the City of New York contacted us, along with the Human Relations Commission and Community Legal Services, who are our partners on that initiative, to talk about how they are experiencing a very similar issue as it relates to self-help evictions and the police department's role in lockouts that could be handled differently to improve outcomes for people who are suffering eviction. So that interagency work has now turned into intercity work, and so we're really happy to continue to support that. Commissioner Outlaw and the mayor have, and the city solicitor's office have initiated a police reform subcommittee, which the PAC is happy to be part of. And so that work is largely coming together as a city government with interested community stakeholders to talk about what reforms are needed and what reforms could be done. And so I'm really excited to continue to work with the police department, as well as the city leadership and many other folks who are stakeholders within policing, to talk about how some reforms could be actualized. So that's been really great. I've discussed in the past the PBI collaboration that is folded into a lot of the police reform work that's going on. And so for those of you, if this is your first meeting or haven't been here in a while, The PBI stands for the Police Board of Inquiry. The PAC, in a lot of its work, Plainview being the Plainview Project report being chief amongst them, has some concerns about the overall disciplinary process. I think concerns that many police leaders share. I won't speak for them, but as I understand it, that they share or feel are worthy of review. And we are currently well into our project plan. We delivered a plan to the police department to work collaboratively with them, and have recently delivered a request for information that would give us the first step towards this plan. So I think we're well on our way. We're looking forward to some thoughtful recommendations to improve the overall process, starting with the Police Board of Inquiry. So we're looking forward to that. In other news, I have been referencing for just about a year that we will hopefully be offering a Plainview project report to the police department and to the public. I'm happy to confirm that we have delivered the report to the police department. A presentation is forthcoming in October, and we will be able to make that report public somewhere between October 7th and 14th. Stay tuned for an exact date. But we are we're excited to finally bring what is closer to a year of work led mostly by Janine to fruition. And I'll mention, just to manage expectations, that report is broken into 3 parts. The first 2 have been completed and delivered. The third is in process. So Janine is still working on that, and I'm sure in an excited fashion. And we're hopeful to offer that at a later date. So Rhonda mentioned the ballot initiative. That I wish I could offer a lot more information on the ballot initiative. Unfortunately, not many people can. I can tell you that what it will certainly do is solidify a oversight commission in the city government and in the city charter, and that there are swarms of advocates around the city who are laser focused on this, power being chief amongst them. And I think that, and what our hope is that we will be able to, get the ballot amendment passed, and then that we will be able to work as a city with city leaders and with many of you folks to shape how that will look. So definitely, as Rhonda mentioned, tune in to Power Live Free, Imagining Police Oversight on Facebook next Wednesday. This coming Wednesday, let me be clear, at 7 p.m. But moreover, please try and vote in November. There's slightly other larger issues, I know, to be voted on, but please try and vote for wherever you are on that issue. And so finally, I just want to highlight why one of our main events for tonight is, of course, a partnership with the police department on their mobility project. It's far more than just the PAC and the police department. I think they will go into the other partners. But I just want to highlight how much I appreciate being asked to participate in this initiative, and also highlight how much of a change that is from previous years. That the PAC has been engaged voluntarily by the police department, and that we were more than willing to participate. It's the type of partnership that I think is really best for the city, and I appreciate Commissioner Outlaw's leadership, as well as Commissioner Singleton for his leadership on these issues as well. So I'd like to turn it over to First Deputy Mel Singleton, and to Director of Research and Planning, I believe, Kevin Thomas. So thank you all, and please take it from here, guys.
Yes, good evening, all. If you can hear me, hopefully I properly unmuted my device. So, as you all know, Philadelphia is experiencing some significant increases in violence. It's not just Philadelphia, actually it's a national problem. But that being said, in Philadelphia, we have 1,510 people shot to date. That represents a 38% increase in shootings this time versus this time last year. Also, our homicides are up 38%, which is significant, and including some children, unfortunately. To combat this problem, we have engaged in a multi-pronged gun violent crime reduction strategy aimed at reducing violence and creating safer communities, as said on the screen. It's called the Mobility Project, and it will be piloted in the 22nd, 24th, and 25th districts, which represents 33% of our violence. That being said, if you look at the Commissioner's Action Plan, it talks about 3 pillars. One is organizational excellence. The other is crime prevention and reduction, and the other one is community engagement and inclusion. This mobility project encompasses all 3 of those pillars. As you can see, in the area of crime prevention and reduction, we have the capabilities of alerting officers to target locations, send officers real-time information based on their locations, and it provides an evidence-based approach to reducing and addressing crime. In the area of organizational excellence, we are, among other things, one of the goals is to leverage technology to improve our functions and capacities and capabilities. And the Mobility Project definitely does that. In the area of community engagement and inclusion, as you can see, the act will allow officers to report quality life issues and submit service requests, that's 311 entries, and reduce crime by reducing disorder, right? That's everything addressing everything from cars, abandoned houses, trash-strewn lots, all of those conditions conducive to crime. Also, it will set up and make officers more effectively accountable to the community, allow the community to connect and talk to the officers directly if necessary. And also from the area of investigations, ease communications between families of homicide victims and investigators. And I think that's one very important thing there. So before I pass it off to Kevin, I think that this is, he'll get more in depth. I think this should be great for reducing crime and helping us form better partnerships with the community as we move forward to try to reduce this violence. You can take it away, Kevin.
Sure. Thanks everyone for having us here today. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and answer any questions that you might have. So the 2 main components of this program are obviously the phone or the device that we want to hand to over 1,000 officers and investigators, including homicide, as well as these district crime information centers. Over at the Intel Bureau, where the analytical program is, we have, and the real-time crime center is, we have the advantage of having these decision support centers. Following the model of quite a few other cities, we're looking to expand this to include crime information centers inside each division and possibly each district, depending on how this project goes. So as many of you know, the 24th and 25th districts are combined in one building. So we're creating one crime information center there. And then we're making another crime information center at the 22nd district. So part of the funding that we received, we'll be able to give that sort of technology to support that. So it goes sort of hand in hand. You have the CICs, which are supporting the decision support, and then you have the phones, which make that connectivity between those CICs to the officers, if that makes sense. So these centers are going to we're going to increase the tools that they have and also skills to better serve the community. So within these CICs, we're staffing analysts. Many of you might know that we've been working on building our civilian analyst program. We've hired 15 so far, and we hope to expand that further. We already have civilian analysts now embedded in the 24th, 25th, and 22nd districts, and we plan on expanding that into the future. In addition, we have officers that work side by side with them that support the sort of the process of looking at the information, analyzing it, and sharing that. So in terms of the mobile communication ends of this, that we really believe that while we want to really focus on the hotspots where we have the most violence, we realize that that has to go hand in hand with supporting the community. So our hope is through this technology, through providing these phones, the community members will be able to play a more active role in local policing strategies by having a more direct connection to officers and having a phone number to call them. Crime victims with homicide crime victims can reach out through some of the apps that we're developing to receive critical resources about their cases as it becomes available through their district victim assistance officer. Just again, trying to make a more direct connection. We want to be able to, that families of homicide victims will have a phone number that they can call. We know this was in a PAC report that made this recommendation. And so out of this, a good portion, if not all of homicide is going to be a part of the deployment of these phones. And then also a more direct connection to city services. So using the technology that we're going to be providing on the phone, the officers will be able to report quality of life and environmental issues directly through 311, right off the phone, deal with abandoned cars more quickly, overgrown lots, dangerous properties, and any other neighborhood concerns. Some of you may be familiar with the Resilience Project. Just on a sidebar on this, the Resilience Project was the opioid effort up in Kensington, and one of the things that they discovered is that they were able to increase the service level agreement with 311 for requests for services, 311 services in that area. We're taking, and that actually was fairly successful. We actually increased the time that it took to clean up some of these lots if they occurred inside these areas. That's where this program sort of goes hand in hand with the strategies, because we will be identifying those areas where those hotspots are, and we'll be applying that same type of model to this. So it's beyond just Kensington. So next slide. This is just a screenshot of a couple of apps that we're going to be working with that are sort of mocked up. So you're going to have the ability on the upper left to sort of very quickly collect information, types of community engagement that those officers are having, type of crime prevention activities. As we know, what gets measured gets done. There's a lot of work that officers do that doesn't get put into any system. So we have to figure out the right balance to make that information reportable, but not overburdensome in terms of paperwork. But because as we're able to then get those data, we're going to be able to share that in terms of ComStat and the other sort of accountability structures within the department. As I already stated, 311, sort of a heads up Google-like map to display information in heads up form to officers right in the vicinity of where the phone is available. Analysis that's available to them in a form that is easily understandable and actionable. In the lower left, you'll see our AVL system. AVL stands for automatic vehicle location. Right now, every vehicle reports GPS in real time. We'll also be able to do that if an officer has been issued, like a footbeat or a bike has been issued a call sign, then those dots will show up right next to those cars. So now we'll finally have a complete picture of our deployment and where our officers are, both for officer safety purposes and as well as deployment analysis and accountability. Again, we'll also be able to report data. So for example, we report in ODs centrally. So if they do a Narcan administration for an overdose, they have to report that now. They'll be able to do that right off the phone. They'll be able to send information to these CSCs right off the phone directly so that it becomes immediately actionable. Of course, there's the basic information about, Miss C calling Officer Irving directly. I mean, they'll be able to have a direct connection with those officers, both the community and the department. And then again, we'll be able to get an idea of where officers are and what's immediately surrounding them. So if we've highlighted an area that's of specific concern, they're going to know when they are or are not inside that area, or grid, as we call them. So Intel notifications, this is just a simple mock-up to explain that what we're going to be, we're working on making sure that this information is presented to the officer in a way that is easily understandable and actionable. And we'll talk about the evaluation, but this is key because it's a way that we're able to cycle information back. So we don't want to tell the officers of where they need to go and what they need to look for. We also want them to tell us what their experience is and be able to roll that back into the analytical cycle. So again, the seamless integration of information and immediately into operational response, which is one of the key components of the commissioner's strategy. Next slide. So in terms of outcomes, our goal is to enhance the community safety with the least amount of enforcement possible. The commissioner talks a lot about surgical policing. I mean, we know that we cannot stop everybody, and we know that we cannot arrest our way out of this violence and crime problem. So what we need to do is do the least amount of policing with the greatest amount of effect. This isn't an arrest-based strategy, but it focuses on deployment and information sharing. We want officers in the right place at the right time with the right information so that we're able to provide public safety. And also the mobility program enables dissemination of information on social services so that we're able to let people know when they have, that was something that we talked to the officers about that they mentioned, just a place where they can go online just to, on their phone, just to know what kind of services they can make available or present to individuals on the street that are asking for them. And we can point them in the right direction. And then also to let this brings the community into the process. It's inclusive of the community to inform the strategies that the commanders and inspectors are developing for those districts. And finally, we enhance accountability and realize cost savings. There's a ton of paper and pen processes. Just court notices alone, we have found out, may end up paying for this program. While we won't have it completely available this round, this device gives us the jumping off point to be able to do a lot more and expand this program later if it gets funded into future years. Finally, community engagement. We're working on a schedule for this in terms of, and you guys were our first step. And we really appreciated Hans giving us a chance to present to you guys. So we're presenting to you right now. The next step is to reach out to the community stakeholders in each district, which the captains and inspectors are already working on. We're going to connect with our local elected officials and meet with the PDACs and neighborhood and business leaders. And finally, meet with violence prevention providers and community leadership. So we really want people to understand what this program is and so that they're aware of it. And we also want to incorporate community feedback. So the information that we get from you guys is incredibly valuable. Please, any of your thoughts, even if you can't get it on the meeting today, please make sure that you reach out to us and share that. We'll provide information for that. And because we really want to be inclusive of what the needs are, and you guys represent a part of that voice. Next. So I'm actually going to pick on Greg. We have Dr. Ridgway here. He's part of the Penn team that's going to help us with evaluating this, because obviously we're not doing this just to spend money. We do believe this is going to have an impact. So Greg, did you want to chat a little bit about this?
Yeah, just briefly, we put a team together to conduct an evaluation. We're very interested in the amount of information that officers can handle. If we're pushing information every 5 minutes and notifications and information, it's going to be information overload, and we might sort of lose the value of the mobility project. If we're giving too little information, then the officers aren't taking advantage of the whole program. So we're trying to test, we're planning on testing just how much information we can push out to the officers and what kind of an information volume they can handle in a way that helps them identify how to be at the right places at the right times and engage the community in the right way. So we're going to be testing a variety of basically the amount of and kinds of information that we're going to supply. It's been great working with the team at PPD. There's technology going in, the technology backbone we're working on, but our role is not to decide the specific information. It's just to design an evaluation to determine just how much information officers can handle and what kind of information has the greatest benefit to Philadelphia.
Great, thanks, Greg. So that's the end of our formal presentation, but we wanted to certainly open it up for questions. We have actually the inspectors of both East Division and Central Division here, as well as our Inspector of Community Services, obviously Craig Head, and I'm sure we probably have folks that I'm not thinking of. We even have some technology folks and everybody here. So we have lots of folks here that are ready to answer your questions if you have.
Thank you. Thank you to Deputy Commissioner Singleton and the team for that presentation. So Danny, how are we handling questions? Folks can either raise their hand, I think.
Yeah, they can raise their hand and ask them directly. They're also welcome to send me questions in the chat. All are totally doable. I don't.
George has his hand up.
Great, I'll unmute George.
So there actually is a raise your hand feature. So you can raise your actual hand, like and Bilal is also actually raising his hand, but there's a raise your hand feature in the chat.
George, I tried to unmute you. You should be unmuted now.
There we go. Yeah, so what does it mean that people in the public will have direct access to police officers? Does that mean that they'll have their phone number? Does it mean that there'll be something in between that will receive the question or the inquiry or the information and then convey it to the police? What exactly does it mean?
Kevin.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I was locked in. That's okay. I'm back. So I'm actually going to pick on a couple of the inspectors because these are their divisions that these phones are going to, along with homicide. Inspector Smith or Inspector Cram, did you want to take this one up? How do you feel like this is going to help connect your officers directly to them?
Inspector Cram, I think I just unmuted you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, try one more.
Hello?
Echo.
How about now? We good?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Okay, sorry about that. I am definitely having some technical difficulties today. So I apologize. So, here's the reality is that officers have already been doing a lot of this stuff using their own phones. We get a tremendous amount of information from our community, especially when the officers are out on the street. The problem with that is we can't measure anything they get or what they do. So we have a lot of informal relationships that are already built with the officers using their own phones. So this is just now the officers have an additional tool, and we can measure when they're getting an informal community contact. So right now, a lot of them, when they build a relationship with somebody, they'll pass out their own phone number, but for the most part, they use their email. Now they'll be able to get their email and a phone number that's connected to a city phone. We actually did something like this years ago under Philly Rising, where we loaded 311 app onto the officers' personal phones, and we had a lot of success with it as well. So this is something new. We're just giving them a better platform, or an official platform to do work that many of them are doing anyhow.
Inspector Cram, are you by any chance on two devices? That might be the situation. So if you are, try muting one of your devices for the next. Because we heard you twice, almost like you were on your phone and on your computer or something like that. But I think we got all of that. I was able to hear most of it. So thank you for that. I think Bilal was up in the queue next, Danny.
Yes, let me grab him again. Bilal, I'm unmuting you.
He's still muted.
There we go.
Couple questions. When does this start, and how many officers will have phones? And the reason I'm asking is, I understand the homicide division, all the officers don't have phones. I might be wrong on that, but I understand they don't have phones, city phones. So when does this start? Will all the homicide detectives have phones? And what is the duration of this funding? In other words, will you start next month and it's only a year for funding, or is this going to be continuation of this project?
Oh, yeah, no problem. I probably should have explained some of this ahead of time. I apologize, and thank you for the question. So we're operating off of a grant right now, which is probably just north of $1 million. It's pretty significant. It's really the cost of the phones and the data plans, when you add up for 1,000 users, that really drives up the cost. So right now, that's going to get us good for about a year. We have been working on this on a kind of a fast track since the beginning of this year when we received the grant. And the plan will be, our plan was actually to deploy the phones in July, at the height of what we knew was going to be the violence during the summer. But obviously there was been a few things going on this year that may have delayed things a little bit, but we're trying to keep it generally on track. So our hope is that probably October, maybe November would be the time when the phones would be first deployed. We're going to deploy them out to squads in phases, including homicide, so that we're able to do some of the evaluation that Greg was discussing. Because if we give it to everybody at once, it becomes a little bit more difficult to do some of the measurements that we're looking to do. But by the time probably in early next year is when we would have the full rollout of all the devices. And I don't want to promise every single person in homicide, but we are going to really try to get every person in homicide a phone. I'll tell you, we have 1,000 devices. We're doing this in 3 districts. And my guess is that's probably about 3/4 or so of the 1,000 phones. So we should have a bunch left over that we want to include homicide and maybe a couple of other special units as well, so that we can really round out what we're looking to do. But homicide beyond the districts is our next priority.
Follow-up. I understand you only have 60 homicide detectives, so homicide should be priority.
Yep, but that's exactly, yep, absolutely.
So what I'm saying is, as a citizen, because you got a grant, but as a citizen, every member of homicide should have a phone whenever you start it. It's October 1st, or October 5th. Every member, there's only 60 members of homicide. The most important folks on the streets today are homicide division. So every one of them needs to have a phone. I'm gonna tell you, the biggest criticism from community activists is that the victims of families are not being contacted, and then you hear that they're not being contacted because homicide detectives don't have phones. Clear all that myth out of the way. Make sure that every single homicide detective has a phone when you start this program.
So so with only 60 homicide detectives, that should be pretty easy to do. I don't know why I thought we had more, but thank you for educating me on that. So yes, there's no reason why all 60 can't have a phone. I mean, and we've heard from the back recommendations, and we've also heard from homicide itself that this is really dearly needed. So yes, aside from patrol, they are the priority. In addition, part of this is to develop the justification and understand the technology required to do a full rollout for the entire department. So after the course of this evaluation, knock on wood, all things go well, we make the case for City Council to sustain this year after year and expand to the entire department. That's really the plan. This has been discussed at quite some length over the years, my entire tenure at least at the PVD. So it's the fact that we received this grant and are able to get this stood up is really great. So yes, homicide priority, full rollout after 1 year.
Thank you. I wonder if we can go to Inspector Smith. Kevin, you were suggesting that Inspector Smith could also add to the answer to George's question.
Yes.
Where?
Yeah, so we don't see his name.
I don't know if he's
here.
on. He might not have made it.
Is that Walter Smith or is that someone else?
Walter Smith, yes. Oh, he's right there. Look at him.
Great.
Thank you.
There it is.
Inspector Smith, you should be unmuted.
Hi, how you doing? Inspector Walt Smith. I'm in charge of Central Police Division. First of all, I want to say that this is a great opportunity for us in the police department to have the Police Advisory Commission, on the ground level. I mean, the goal behind our whole mobility program is to create transparencies, and these are great questions that are coming up. I agree 100%. Homicide should definitely have connectivity with the families. That's one of the issues we always struggle with. But also having the officers on the street having these phones as well. At the beginning, keep in mind, this is only the beginning of this project. This is our pilot rollout. Eventually, if this program is successful, which we believe it will be, we'd like to roll this out to as many officers as possible. There's nothing worse than having community members afraid to tell the police officers of something, horrendous going on with their community because they don't want to see, they don't want anybody to see them talking to the police officers. So number one, this gives a great opportunity for the officers and the community to open that communications, which is really critical for our policing efforts in all the communities. Obviously, we can't do this alone, and partnering with the with the pack early on, I think is an outstanding idea. And now, we also want to have a community provide, some sort of support or conversation or begin a conversation, in police strategies. So this gives us an opportunity to do that. And the reality is if you look at cellular technology and where other agencies are in this world, we're a little behind the curve, in this idea. And we're very grateful for the grant that has come forward to allow us to be able to do this. And we're hoping, I know Blah was on the phone and he's a friend of mine, and I'm in Central Division, so I'll be calling Blah, see how we can fund further, down the road. But I think it gives us an opportunity to have that direct connect. The conversation was about the phone number, with that everybody have this phone number. That's our goal, to have everybody in the community have that officer's number so they can have conversations. But keep in mind, not only in addition to the crime problems that we're looking to handle, we're also looking to handle the quality of life issues. A lot of community members, if a homicide occurs, it's pretty devastating in the community, and obviously that I don't take that, lightly. However, there's other things in communities that make community members want to leave the community, and that's blight. Abandoned cars, buildings, street lights out, trash, nobody can do anything about. So now the officer is going to have direct connectivity, supporting the 311 system to be able to call directly to these agencies, and we're going to track these responses to ensure that the community is actually receiving the service. So I look at this mobility program as an opportunity for the officers to have within their hand an ability that they never had before. And I think this will help our efforts expand greatly. And if you look at, as I said, if you look at the private sector, this isn't something that's brand new that's just coming along. This is something the private sector does every day, create connectivity. And right now we're on Zoom. We're not meeting face to face, unfortunately, because of COVID. But here we are on a Zoom meeting talking about a mobility program. So it's kind of apropos that we're having this conversation about this on mobile devices. So I think just from this meeting alone, you can see the success this program will offer.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, were you had a question?
I did. I have several questions baked into one comment, and I'll leave it up to people wiser than me to disentangle them from each other. So I'm interested with the ability to present crime data in real time using the cell phone. And I'm hoping somebody could talk a bit more about how that's going to be presented, how perhaps strategies around those trends might be presented to officers so that there's consistency in how they're reacting to trends within these districts, whether or not there's going to be any additional training in terms of understanding and interpreting data. And I also want to know another slightly data-related question, and this might be a question for you, Professor Ridgway, in terms of how are we evaluating quality metrics to determine whether or not this is an effective policy. So looking at the information that was presented in advance, we see 3 high crime districts in an anomalously, hopefully, high crime year, and that's where the pilot program is going to be implemented. So are we going to look at regression to the, not regression to the mean, but resorting to normal high, but still comparatively high crime levels in the community as an evaluation of good measure? We're looking at community satisfaction. What are some of the metrics that we'll be using to determine whether or not this is a successful program?
Sure. So I'll start. Maybe Greg can pick up. So when we first made this pitch to the grantor back in late last year, early this year, January, we of course had no idea what was coming. I mean, we knew that we had a multi-year trend. We knew that for certain. We certainly had no idea of what kind of increase we were going to see. I mean, 47% is not a number I've ever seen in the 8 years I've been with the department. Yes, it is unfortunately a bit of what you said. It's an unusual year, that's for sure. And I think Greg can go into a little bit about how he's going to overcome that. I think some of that will be in the analysis of sort of the usage of these phones in comparing between squads, in particular in the districts. In terms of the data analysis piece, all the stuff that we're presenting to them, they have access to now. So the officers can reach the same data that we're going to be providing them on a mobile data computer inside a car, if that's where they're deployed. They can receive that information at a desktop, right? But the exercise that we're trying to do here is really present the information, the right type, the right sort of information, in the right framed correctly and at the right time. So, for example, if we've identified an area where is of particular concern, I mean, we have our areas that are long-term hotspots, and then we have sort of short-term areas that flare up. We all know about that. So we actually are currently today providing information and analysis that says, hey, this is an area that we're concerned about, and here's why. So what the phone is going to allow us to do, for example, is to take that analysis that somebody does, either at the CIC or with the analytical group, and then actually have it ping that phone to say, hey, you just entered an area where there's concerning information. And what we want to find is that the officers are actually reading that more. It's being delivered to them in the time and the frequency that they need it, and in a form that is understandable and actionable, and with questions that we have that hopefully they can answer. These are all the types of things that UPenn is going to be evaluating. So, Greg, did you want to build on that a little bit?
Sure. So one of the key things that Philly PD can't roll out all the phones to everyone at the same time. Just the training, the equipment, getting everything set up. So we're going to take advantage of that. So there is going to be periods where only a few officers have phones, then a couple more, then a couple weeks later, a couple more. So there's this rollout. And if the information that we're pushing to them, like, hey, there's a new area, a new intersection that our crime analysts have said you need to spend more time on, whatever, we start pushing that information to the officers that have phones. An intermediate outcome is, do officers notice? Do they actually spend time in the places and doing the things that the analysis says this is part of the strategy to address the emerging problem in this area? One of the other screenshots that was in the presentation was about trying to get information to help address crime problems. So the phones will also be pushing questions out. Do the officers know about relationships between these two groups or these two people? Do you know anything about this? So when an officer is in a particular area, they might get pushed a question. Do you know about this, anything about this connection or this relationship? Those questions are already being asked now, as Kevin pointed out. They're just not accessible and available and pushed to be in front of an officer at the right time, at the right place, when they might be thinking about crime problems in a particular area. So some officers will have phones, some won't. We'll be pushing questions, we'll be pushing information about times and places where they might need to spend more time. And we want to see if there's a response. Do officers actually change behavior? Do they generate more information? Do they clear more shootings? Those that have the phones. Does that help?
It does help. So thank you both very much for that. It does clarify a lot of what I've been wondering. And now I have a secondary wonder, which I don't know that either of you could answer, but if so, wonderful. If there's any pre-existing, not Philadelphia, of course, but cities that have implemented similar practices or policies, to hear this described, when I hear push notifications, the cynic in me immediately worries that this may be used to it may accidentally lead to, say, an enhanced sense of alertness within officers and create a self-fulfilling prophecy where there might be people who are erroneously stopped because they get a notification once they cross the street about, say, gang activity in a certain community or, a shooting nearby. Is there any literature that you're aware of or any previous pilots in cities that have shown adverse, certainly unintentional effects of a program such as this?
So we do know that there's several cities that have done programs similar to this. Los Angeles, Chicago, most of New York. Many of these major cities already have this technology and have been sort of testing some of the same waters. In terms of the push notifications, as comprehensively as we're doing it, I can't think of any group quite off the top of my head, but really it's like, for example, in Chicago, it was really focused around these crime information centers and making sure that they were delivering that information, even if it was at roll call, for those officers right then and there. We're actually, and then they brought in the cell phones later. We're actually kind of doing this at the same time. So keep in mind, they're already being told about this information potentially at roll call. This information is already made and delivered to them, including like where the areas are. So none of this in terms of the information that we're sharing is new, but it is being delivered in a different form. So like, for example, we might have a bulletin that's put together by an analyst that's very verbose right now, right? That explains an area and why it's concerning, and maybe even making recommendations for the kind of deployment that should go there. Well, right now what this is going to do is then just deliver that same information, but in a very different form, in a way that is more actionable. It's prioritizing the questions that we want to have answers to, and really just limiting to the information that the officers really need to be effective in that area. In terms of what we hope to see is, that's where the AVL, in terms of the stops, I think one of the pieces that we really want to expand on is the use of passive monitoring of locations through the GPS capabilities of the phones, so that we can really look at deployment in a way that doesn't require a stop or an arrest or anything to know that officers were spending time in that area. This has been done in Dallas. They saw some amazing effects inside hotspots just because they started really using the GPS information and doing sort of planned deployments in those areas, saying, hey, this is the number of hours that we want you to spend inside a hotspot, and then actually feeding that information back to the commanders so that they can understand whether or not their folks actually spent the time that they said they were going to inside those areas. And that can be accomplished without even making a single stop. So I think combining these tools together, we're taking lessons learned from multiple cities at the same time and trying to present that in a more comprehensive way. That's sort of the advantage of, I think, of being one of the cities last to the game, is that we can really actually integrate some of these tools all at once in a thoughtful, comprehensive way. And once again, this is a jumping off point. We're proving out the technology. We're proving out that we can provide a secure phone to officers that meets all the security requirements. And we're proving that our analytical systems can speak to these phones. At this point, it's really a matter, the PD can then shape what is presented to those officers in any way that we want, to any strategy that we want. So I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Rob, I think I have a next question. I'm unmuting you, Rob.
As far as how the questions or how the correspondence happens between citizens and police officers, is there, as far as the discourse, when a citizen contacts, is it all individually based on the 1,000 phones, right? So if someone goes, it just goes to one officer, because like if you reach out to an officer and they just don't get back to you, I mean, that's happened to me before. What happens then? Does it reach a pool so that another officer could actually see, oh, this message wasn't responded to, this contact wasn't responded to, and so they could reach out?
Sure. I'm going to look at either Inspector Cram or Inspector Smith. Do one of you want to speak to that a little bit?
I'm going to mute them. Inspector Cram, I'm unmuting you if you wanted to.
Okay. Yeah. So remember, a lot of those, what's going on now is their personal relationships. So if they send a, can you guys hear me?
We can't.
Do you think it's possible? Are you on two devices? Are you
maybe using a headset?
No, I'm not. I think I'm telling you, I'm just having issues. I can't control on my phone, so I'm trying to do it off a laptop, and now I'm having some issues.
All right. Well, go ahead. Yeah, we're just hearing you twice, like a pretty significant echo. That's why I asked that. I thought maybe you were on your phone and your laptop.
Yeah. Does this sound any better?
Yeah.
Is this better like this?
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. It's my headphones. There we go. All right. So a lot of these contacts now are based on just the personal relationships with the officers that they've developed, and the ones using their personal phone. So we would have to, and that's a good point.
So what I'm wondering now, Kev, is it maybe it's possible that we have some type of group email to where they can all see it? I think that'd be something we would have to deconflict, because obviously if I have a personal relationship with you, for the most part, you know, that's been developed over time and a lot of interactions. That's a good point, though. That might be something we need to consider. How do we get it so those, you know, the 40 footbeat officers that we have out on the street, where maybe 2 are assigned outside the area today or day off or vacation, that the other officers get to see this particular issue if it's an issue for the group. So that's a good fail point that you brought up. I didn't even think of that. Sometimes we get so excited on the technology that we never had that we miss those little things. So that's something we definitely have to explore.
So we're going to have an app on the phone that allows a simple app to allow the officer to send information, right? So this is where the CICs in the phone sort of come into play. No matter what kind of information it is, it could be a community issue after talking to a community member. It could be something regarding recent violence that occurred. It could be just a simple observation, right? Or an issue that seems to keep on coming back, like a lot that is particularly concerning, that we have lots of people congregating around, that just continues to be an attractor for crime. All that information gets put into the phone and it gets launched over to another system that collects all that information that we already own, that the CICs are observing and looking at, along with the real-time 911 information coming through. If that information gets centralized that way, then hopefully those CICs become a mechanism at which that information can be either, you know, sent to someone else or dealt with in the appropriate manner. So I don't know if I'm getting at the question, but I think it's a good one. And I think, though, that the more we just encourage the officers to use the phones and the apps that we put on there and to share that information, the more it becomes just a matter of empowering the CICs with those information so that action can be taken. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Kev, this is Walt Smith again from Central. Just like to add briefly to both Mike's comments and Kevin's comments. As you know, these are cellular devices, and it's a technology solution that we'll be seeking to be able to get that almost that overring effect where someone's trying to call the officer's phone and the phone's busy and the next person could possibly pick that up. The other thing, we didn't mention this, but it's something that should be mentioned, is this mobility program is going to require us to provide training to the police officers in the field. And that training will be able to address a lot of these issues. Obviously, we want this device to be able to enhance our community contacts, not deter from the community that we're already engaging with by not getting back to somebody on the phone. And I know that's very difficult, particularly in a situation where the person feels it's an emergency situation, not rising to the level of 911, obviously, because we want them to call 911 in all emergencies, but in a situation where something actually happens and they want to talk to the police officer about it. It could be, you know, something domestic related or something sensitive that they want to talk to the officer about. So we all have on these cellular phones now the ability to actually send text messages while we're on the call. So I'm on the call right now. Obviously, I can send a message to somebody else saying, you know, I'm on the call right now, I'll get right back to you. There's several messages on these phones already that we can submit. The idea is to make sure that the officers clearly understand that the goals and objectives of this cellular phone is to identify, work with our community members, and also to open up communication. So I think there's a technology solution for this. Almost like an overring type of operation, or like Kevin said, you know, through these centers, or you know, maybe we can connect the officer's cellular phone to a supervisor in the field. That may be a good opportunity for the officer and the supervisor to also engage the community. But I think it's a technology solution. But right now, the solution is, I would think that the person having the phone would send a message quickly to the person calling in, because they may just simply be on a call with another community member. Nothing that the officer doesn't want to answer the call, just that they may be busy with another community member. But I think a quick response like that is the beginning process to open up that door. But I think, you know, down the road, as Kevin has suggested and Mike has suggested, there's definitely a technology solution for that.
Good ideas.
Next, I think, is Michael Clemens. I'm unmuting you.
Thank you. So one of the features that you talked about is, excuse me, is being able to take care of quality of life issues. So the officers will be able to use the 311 system, I believe, in order to take care of things that are going on in the neighborhood. I guess over the years, what I've seen is that we've given police more and more things to do. And I get concerned that once people find out that this may be a shortcut to 311, that the use of police to get things done in the neighborhood will give them just one more job to do besides fight crime. I know Professor Ridgway talked about being able to monitor the use of the phones and the information that's pushed out. Is that something that's going to be monitored? And are officers going to be taught how to handle that? And what I mean is, they're the point of contact, and it's probably up to them to some degree to be able to meter the use of it.
Sure. So currently, right now, the officers on the mobile data computers inside the police cars can actually submit 311 requests. And officers can also do so through a personal phone if they end up using it. But what we're hoping to do is to just increase the ease of that reporting, right? Because you're right. We don't want to be overly burdensome on the officers that already have a lot of work that they need to focus on. So what we want to do is capture that information and direct that to the right people as quickly and as easily as possible. But yes, to your other question regarding whether or not we can or be able to monitor that, all these activities are all being monitored off the phone so that we can know just how well it's being used or not used. And then we're also going to be encouraging, well, the officers are a part of this pilot and the detectives. So we're going to get feedback from them in order to have them participate in any future phases of the project or changes around that.
Great. So thank you for that answer. I just want to point out that we're somewhat short on time. I think there's a lot of interest here. So I just wanted to highlight that if there's any, we typically have a Q&A section anyway at this point. So if there are any questions for either the PPD or for the PAC, please let us know. And I think Danny has an anonymous question that came in the chat. The person asked if we could ask it on their behalf.
Yeah, it says, how are the protocols being developed to ensure ethical and transparent data collection? There's a lot of data suggestion that policies like this should be written with input from the communities to ensure this kind of data collection to minimize their potential use as tools to surveil communities of color.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So the systems that we use today for collection of the information are what we're just extending to the phone, right? And the policies that we have in terms of how we protect our information, protect that information, and submit that information is just being extended to the phone. So I think just to be clear, right, the pathways of this information that that folks may be concerned about are already present. What this is doing is providing a secure way for that information to be provided. Like the inspectors had mentioned, a lot of folks are already using their personal phones. That is something that we are actually trying to avoid doing. So by using this phone, what we're doing is actually trying to ensure that that information is appropriately protected and that it can't be sort of exposed at all. But in terms of any policies surrounding collection of information, it revolves around federal regulations like 28 CFR Part 23, as well as the Criminal History Records Act of the state of Pennsylvania, which expands that even more so. So all those policies still are at play just like they are today. This is just providing a mechanism to hopefully make that information sharing easier and actually create some additional internal, at least, transparency around what information is being collected and how, if that makes sense.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Regina, I believe was the next question I had. I'm muting you, Regina.
Hi. Actually, two questions. So one question is, will there be some type of trauma services offered to the victims and the community when crimes happen as part of this program?
So I can't speak to any specifically new programs, but we can speak a little bit about some of the existing victim services that will be made available. I don't know, Inspector Craighead, Love Craighead, if you're still on the line. I don't know if we have her here.
Inspector, sorry, who is it?
Love Craighead, Love-Craighead.
Let me see.
I don't think she's on.
Oh no, she's here. I'm muting her.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can. Thank you.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. So we already have victim assistance officers in every police district. And those officers, it's their responsibility to make sure they follow up with victims of crime and connect them to services, particularly trauma-informed services. But what this will do, this will allow officers from their cell phones to look up those resources that they can pass on to victims right there on the scene.
Okay. And my second question is, will you be working with like block captains or community persons at first as far as giving out the numbers, or how is that going to be determined who gets the numbers?
So block captains are information that's kept by the streets department. So oftentimes the PPD is not necessarily aware of who all the block captains are. I would say that in terms of how this information is disseminated, I would have to say we would leave that available for operations to make the call on how they would want to do that. I mean, right now we're already advertising, I believe, like information to contact the victim services officer or the crime prevention officer. So I think this would just make a number that would be a more direct connect to those individuals. I don't know if Walter, Mike, if you wanted to add to that at all. Dr. Smith?
Danny, are you unmuting? Okay, here we go.
All right, yeah. Sorry, I was unmuted.
No
I was
problem.
on mute there for a minute. So I think the block captains are an excellent beginning point. Number one, we need to develop a stronger relationship with the block captains. As Kevin said, identifying who they are and getting them together early on will help us because a lot of the community complaints also go to the block captains. So we don't want to bypass them. They're a very great asset for us within the community. So I think that's at least at the beginning a conversation with the block captains, to talk about our program. And just to mention real quickly, the issue is that this is a community also driven initiative, and we intend to go to the community with this as well to continue that transparency. So that's an excellent point about the block captains. They've been doing a lot of great work with our department. So is our police district advisory councils and other people. So we really want to be able to funnel this to the right place it needs to be funneled at the right time. So thank you for that question.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The next person I had looks like it's Darlene. Darlene, you're unmuted.
Okay, good evening. Yes, I was more concerned about, the way the program seems to be going. But in reference to the community and the blight issue, I noticed in the area where I'm at, right, and I'm in the 19th district, right, the things that's been going on, I noticed that the trees are being kept. The trees are overgrowing the lights that we have in our blocks in the streets. So it's causing a lot of dim, darkness. So in reference to the program of getting the community involved, they could identify areas where certain things are being hidden, where it's running to and everything like that. And then if you don't have an active block captain, how, as a regular constituent, how can they end up being involved as a group to end up, helping and assisting and having the quality of life of this non-crime stuff going on?
Well, I think that's the beauty of providing the capability in the hands of the officers directly, and including especially our foot beats and our bike officers who aren't necessarily sitting inside a car. And also the way that we're attempting to design the applications in order to make them as easily as simple as possible, so that, you know, an individual, even if they don't have a block captain, can just easily speak to that officer and then have them right there on the fly get that information sent over, so that the CICs can be aware of it and deal with it accordingly. I can't promise to you guys that this just means that all of a sudden that there's going to be a bunch of more funding to take care of some of these blight issues. Obviously, we're limited to whatever the budget that, let's say, L&I or the Parks Department or folks have. But I can say that with the roadmap for safer communities and the strategy that's being laid out by MDO and the PPD, the idea is to make sure that those services are prioritized in our most significant hotspots, because we understand that it's a totality of work that needs to be done in these neighborhoods. It's not just hotspot policing. It's not just focusing on offenders. It's not just community policing. It's problem solving. It's all these things combined. So I can say that weekly, with the roadmap, that we meet with these other city services. Just about everybody is there. And we're now standing up an expansion of the commissioner's strategy into a bunch of different areas that will then drive the focus of these agencies in terms of where they're spending their money. I hope that helps.
Thank you. The next person I had was Jacqueline. I'm unmuting you, Jacqueline. Jacqueline, are you?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I came on late, but here's my I have a couple points. First of all, I'm a long-term resident and live in the 22nd Police District in North Central Philadelphia. And my question has to do with this. I feel sometimes we are over-policed. We have the Philadelphia Police Department, Philadelphia Housing Authority, Temple University, SEPTA Police, and yet there's still crime. This question was raised when the, I call him sort of new, Captain Akil had a community meeting. And we learned that there are some agreements, which was sort of surprising to some of us, with respect to, maybe it's the 22nd, I'm not sure, with these other entities, which means this. For example, one of the activists noticed a break-in of one of our playgrounds and called what she thought was the Philadelphia Police Department, but Temple Police came and she said, well, I didn't call you, I called Philadelphia Police. So Captain Akil explained that, well, whoever comes, you know, they can help. But I don't think there's this clarity with respect to the authority and the policing power of any other police entity other than the Philadelphia Police Department. And we've heard that, yes, everyone is supposed to have the same training at the police academy, but I don't know if that's the same time frame as the Philadelphia Police Department or not. So the question is, are these types of agreements citywide? And if so, I would think that people need to know that. The taxpayers and residents need to know the policing power and authority of all these other entities. Because some of us have an understanding, for example, with Temple Police, that they are east of Broad, maybe 8th or 9th Street, but only up to 18th Street. Yet you'll see them zooming all around.
So Ms. Williams, I want to thank you for your question. This is definitely an issue that I have never really heard about in terms of agreements. And of course, if there's some police folks that want to respond to it, then I absolutely encourage them to. But I do want to encourage everyone else on the call moving forward to try and focus just a little bit on the mobility project, with the understanding that the police department has a ton of things that we're all curious about. But I don't want this to turn into a conversation on policing in general. I think there's plenty of opportunity for that, and I'd like to invite some folks back for that. But I do want to focus on the mobility project for now. But since you've asked the question, I don't know if there's anyone on here who wants to either respond briefly. So the First Deputy Singleton has indicated that he would like to respond. So if you don't mind, Danny.
Yep.
And then moving forward, and while I really appreciate the question, if we can try and focus on the project, that would be helpful in the small amount of time that we have left.
Deputy Singleton, you're unmuted.
Yes, if you can hear me. Thank you for that question. Definitely, the police department have memorandums of understanding with our policing partners, the SEPTA, the university, as well as PHA Housing Authority. In terms of the universities, sometimes those memos of understanding will lend itself to increasing of their area of responsibility in order to partner with us when we are, again, experiencing capacity issues and those sort of things. So it's a force multiplier for us to partner with our policing partners to make sure that we can, as best we can, tackle this violence that we're seeing. So to your point, and those policing entities do train at and under the same Pennsylvania facility in terms of our police academy. It's the same state regulations that the Philadelphia police officers have and follow. So we do partner with them. That's one of the commissioner's goals, which is to make sure that we partner and leverage those partnerships with our policing partners to make sure that we can do the best job that we can working together. The Philadelphia Police is not in this alone. We're in it with the community. We're in it with our policing partners, federal, state, and local. So the point that I'm hearing, though, that is well taken is that we need to make sure we do a better job of making sure the community is aware of these partnerships so they are in full understanding that.
Thank you, Deputy Singleton.
I had someone ask in the chat, is there a hard copy outline of the program? Is that something that exists? Do you know, Kevin or Stacey?
Sure, we have definitely some internal documents that we would need to just prep a little bit for sharing. But yeah, we do have some documents that outline the program. Is there any, and like the program's budget and things of that nature? You know, I would need to check with Deputy Singleton, but I think we could definitely put something together for you guys to see.
Thank you. I think those are all the questions that I've gotten so far in the chat. I think that was everyone. Is there anyone else who had questions wants to raise their hand or signal?
I want to thank our guests for the thoughtful questions on the operations of the mobility project. I recognize that you're here presenting it to us, but I think that we've had a lot of food for thought on how this will work. So I want to thank all the folks for their additional ideas.
I think Stacey has a comment before we go.
Please.
Yeah, I just want to thank you all. We're all working on this as a team, and your questions have really been helpful and will help shape kind of as we move forward. So we very much appreciate kind of the issues you raised or the questions you have or the people who need to be part of shaping this program. So I very much, on behalf of the department, want to thank you all for your thoughtful questions and comments and suggestions.
Yes, thank you.
Well,
Other
thank you.
questions? I'm sorry, Hans, please.
Just saying thank you to everyone who came out today. That's all.
Other questions beyond the mobility project? Okay.
Great.
So I will then make a few final comments before we ask for a motion to adjourn. I want to once again encourage folks to join us at the Power Town Hall this Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Danny has the link in the chat. I want to repeat Hans's fine recommendation about voting. You know, make sure you've made a plan for voting. And remember, all politics is local. So we're counting on us. To that, oh wait, do we have a message?
No, I just put in the chat, if anyone wants to get all the update information from the PAC about our meetings, please join our mailing list. And I put the link to sign up there, and whatever copy we get from PPD of the outline as requested, we'll try to include that in an email as well that we send out.
And Danny, our next monthly meeting is October 19th, is that right?
That is correct, at 6 p.m.
Okay, and so on that date, we will be presenting or briefly presenting the report on the Plainview project. So tune in for that. And also that will be our last meeting before the election. So for all we know, there'll be a different theme after October. So tune in, see what happens. Stay tuned.
May we have a motion to adjourn?
Got one from Ben, it looks like.
Okay, you have a second?
Bilal?
Bilal, Michael.
Thank you, all in favor? Okay, I want to do this correctly. George, I believe we're going all opposed. Any opposition? Seeing none, any abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed. We are adjourned. Take care, stay safe. We'll see you Wednesday at the Power Town Hall and then again in October.
Thanks everyone.
Good night.
Good night.